Welcome to the Databricks Skill Builder series. We're glad you're here.
Hey folks, Arthur Dooner with Robert Mosley here today. We're here to follow up with Agent Studio, a project that Robert has been working on and been building on top of Databricks. But there's a really exciting announcement that Databricks launched DBRX, our new state-of-the-art open LLM. Now, I really want this to be clear when we think about like DBRX and how teams kind of can use this, right? Historically, open models have been easy to use, easy to scale, provided you can get the compute, right? But at the end of the day, there have been some hard limitations on how useful they were compared to, some of the state-of-the-art proprietary models made by OpenAI, Anthropic, those and the like, right? So what we're really excited to show you today is how you can use DBRX with pre-existing LLM architectures and designs like what we've talked about with Agent Studio. We actually have a prior video on how you can use this Agent Studio utility out of the box to build your own custom agent and compound AI tool, right? So what DBRX does in this context, it allows us to move the ownership slide further into the customer's hands, into your user's hands, right? Like, hey, I can run this model locally. I could run this on Databricks. I could run this anywhere that open models are hosted, right? So what's awesome about DBRX is that we can internalize some of the benefits of these more proprietary models, as you can see, like function calling, like with agents that we'll see in a few minutes with Robert, right? Along this at-scale growth of these use cases that you have at really competitive costs. So end of the day, right, really quick, I do want to highlight, not only is DBRX extreme, completely open weight, it is also one of the fastest of these types of models because it matches the kind of design of mixture of experts approaches, which allows us to have these 132 billion parameters offline, and then specific segments of there online, such that I think it's around like 36 billion, that specifically are for online in-memory contexts, such that we get better, like twice the performance of like a Llama 2 70B, right? Because that 70 billion parameter model is taking about twice as long. And just by using this mixture of experts approach, we get about twice as fast responses with GPT-3.5 quality. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Robert to show you how Agent Studio can integrate with this really, really quickly, and you can be building your own custom chatbot, compound AI solution, agent in minutes. Let me stop share.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Arthur. One of the common comments that I get around agents is that the idea is that the only good model for running agents is ChatGPT-4. And while it is true, ChatGPT-4 does facilitate the best agents, what we're seeing with a lot of these open source models is their ability to handle some good agent tasks to be able to facilitate these interactions. So Mixtral was a really good agent model. What we're seeing with DBRX is that it, in my opinion, it's outperforming Mixtral in those same senses. And so I wanted to show how to wire up an agent using DBRX, using Agent Studio, and I'll also show you guys a little bit of what it looks like. So what I have here is I have an agent that I'm using a RAG type solution, letting the model choose what to look up against the vector store. And what I'm doing is I am providing it with a vector store of episodes and transcripts of one of our favorite TV shows. And then I'm asking it questions about that TV show and letting it retrieve that information and provide it to me. So here I'm asking about episodes that include a favorite character. As I put it in, it's going to go and it's going to retrieve information about that, and then it's going to come back and summarize it for me. So as we see here, it found 2 different episodes. It gives me a little bit of summary as to what's going on within those episodes. If we go into the JSON and see what's going on behind the scenes, we see that I ask my question. We see that it goes and it looks up 7 instances of that question, of that reference. And it finds some references from that. And then it gives me the summary. So this is the model. This is DBRX making the choice as to how many records to look for and what values to provide for that search. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how you can build something very similar to this in Databricks using Agent Studio. So first things first, you need a vector store. It's outside the bounds of this video to talk about how to build a vector store. It's relatively straightforward. If you have a table, you can just go up into that, you select that table, and you can go to the right and you can say, hey, create vector store. You fill out some information and it gets generated. If you have questions with that, there's lots of resources on how to create a vector store. What we did is we created a vector store on the dialog. So what it's doing is it's doing similarity searches against that dialog. Going into Agent Studio then to learn how are we going to use this going forward. How can you build it? I'm going to show you 2 different approaches. One is using the UI, which is something that we looked at last time in some of our prior videos. I'm also going to show you how to go about doing this through code if you prefer to do code. So if you have pulled down Agent Studio from the repo being right here, GitHub, R Mosley, and then Agent Studio, there's a sample agent that's out here. This should look mostly familiar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this first and foremost. I'm just going to call this our demo. Get that created right there. So you see everything that's in this. We do need an additional pip install because I just happen to know that it's part of the vector search library out here. I'm going to just go ahead and grab that pip install that we need. So first thing first, just get all my pip install stuff set up. And then I'm gonna need to make sure I'm importing the correct tool. So the default tool that's out here is a text to SQL tool. That's not what we want. We want to use the vector search tool. So what we would do is we would pull in vector search, and then we're going to import the class, which is the retriever. And get that all set up. And then once we have that, we need to go through a little bit more setup. We got our environment variables. Because we're not using the OpenAI today, I'm just going to set this up just in case it at least needs the environment variable. I'm going to specify something for the environment variable, but you'll see it won't be using OpenAI API in the background or OpenAI in the background. Instead, we'll be using our Databricks token to be able to access that vector store. So whatever token and credentials you've used here needs access to that vector store. For me, I'm using my own PAT. So because I created that vector store, it'll have no problems. And then the host, of course, is using our host. We want to use a different tool. Apologize for some dogs barking in the background. So we don't want the Unity catalog tool. We're not doing text to SQL. So we're going to bring over the retriever. I'm just sort of copying and pasting this in. So what we got to do is we need to choose an endpoint. So if you've created a vector store in the past, as we've seen out here, and we look at the overview, our serving endpoint is RAG endpoint. And our table is going to be this one, the Eric scripts VS. So pull that in right there as my index name. Return columns, these are the columns that we want to have output to the model. You can choose whatever columns you want. I ended up selecting just about all of them: ID, character, dialogue, episode number, SEID, and season. Some of the stuff is unnecessary, like SEID really isn't necessary. ID really isn't necessary. So you could just remove these and they wouldn't be provided. I have a special function descriptor here. This is really important when you're using the generic vector store retriever. It doesn't know what the vector store contains. And so this is a little field that I can describe what the vector store contains, and this gets passed along to the model so that the model understands better what's being used here. So I'm providing a description of that repository here. It gives it some extra information as to what it's actually searching for when it searches this vector store. I could have multiple of these. I could have multiple tools here. For this demo, we're just going to have one. And so we create an array of those tools, as we said, just that one. Then we need to set up the config. We are not using OpenAI, so we're going to change that to Databricks. When it comes to the model, you can either type in the full model name, which is in model serving, or you can just use the shorthand, which is DBRX. So in model serving, it's, oops. It's this Databricks DBRX instruct. I had created a little shortcut, just DBRX. So now we're using DBRX inside of it. The chat is actually chat basic. And this is key because by default, these foundational models don't support tool roles in them. And so what this does is this tells me to use a wrapper library that's been built out as part of Agent Studio to allow for tools and things like that to be used against the foundational models. So you got to change that to chat basic. And then you also have an instruction prompt. We're going to change that instruction prompt to something that I have over here. So I have customized this prompt a little bit, and it includes some special instructions as to how to navigate this repository, how to do filters for particular characters, things like that. Log directory, it's not really actually even supported right now. It's just sort of a placeholder that I have for a future feature. So we're going to leave that as empty, and then we're going to leave this here to instantiate it, which passes in this config that we've just created, and then passes in the helpers that we built up in the cell above. After that, we're just going to log, register, and create the endpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and run this notebook, and we'll watch it get generated and begin the build process. I actually, before it gets down here, probably want to change these names. So I'm gonna change these names real quick. I don't want to demo studio. Let's do that, and then change where this gets deployed. There we go. That way we don't end up with any problems. So that one got run. I'm going to run this one. And then we're going to run that. And then we're going to just run everything below. So that would be the other thing you'd need to change is you'd want to change the name of your models, where it gets outputted to, things like that. So we're going to change where our model gets registered to, what its name is, and then this is the endpoint name that ultimately gets created. Everything's been run, so to check it out, we're going to actually go out here to the serving endpoints. I guess we already have that. So I'm going to refresh it, see the new list. We see Demo Studio is being spun up. This will take some time, so we're going to come back to this later as it gets spun up. In the meantime, what we're going to do, you see it actually created the inference table and everything like that. What we're going to do is we're going to actually look at how do we create this through the UI. So let us, I want to make sure we're going to use the right main default. So in the UI, demo studio UI, so that we're going to customize the name a little bit so that we can see it there. We're going to choose the Databricks, and then we're going to choose the DBRX model. Demo of Agent Studio. This really isn't that important here. The thing that really is important is the instruction. So I'm going to copy and paste in the instruction that we used before. You see that. And then, and also up here, what you could also do if you want to compare the two is you could call this one Mixtral, and you could pull in Mixtral. I'm not going to do that for this situation. And then we're going to grab our retriever for vector search. I'm going to add it in. So down below, what we see, this is the YAML that's getting created for our agent. We need to fill in certain pieces of information. This is all stuff that we saw before. So vector search endpoint name, RAG endpoint, and then as far as our index name, paste that in, and then return columns. Paste that in. And then function descriptor, that was that piece that tells us what this is used for. So hold on, paste that in. So now we have a fully built out solution here. I think, all right. It's funny because you'd think I would know, I would have expected this, that it would have built out the array, but right now I'm a little bit nervous about that. So we'll see what happens. What you see here, it does automatically pull in the vector search. So we see that, and we have some of these things here. Did you have a question, Arthur?
Nope.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click log register and deploy, and we're going to see how this gets generated in the background. So as you see right here, this model has, or this notebook has already been created. We come in and yep, this is created successfully, correctly with the array put inside of it. When we go to our workflows, because in the background, this notebook gets created, not workflows, job runs. This notebook gets created. We see ours running right now. And so this has our notebook running our new agent that's being built out, Demo Studio UI. So when we see all this get registered and then deployed, we should also be able to see it going in the model serving endpoint. The YAML also gets saved out here. As you can tell, not every agent it has this, only the ones that are created through the UI. This is just the YAML that gets created out of that. And then what it does is it actually calls a helper library that parses this YAML and turns it into that notebook and then executes that notebook for us. So you can do it one way or the other. You can build out your code by hand, copying from the sample that's provided to you, or you can go through the UI, fill out the forms, and then hit go, and it'll actually create everything on your own. So out here, we still have our original one being spun up, and now we can see our second one being spun up. Any thoughts or questions, Arthur?
Really, there's kind of like the either approach, right? There's the code first approach that you showed first, and the UI based approach that just allows you to kind of plug in the parameters, the configs, some of the columns that you want, and then you're good to go.
Yep. And when we have those endpoints spun up, which we have to skip forward if we're going to see that, because it does take 10 or 15 minutes, to get it to run on your UI, what we would do is we would come into here, we would click on the chatbot app that's in the main directory of Agent Studio, and we would just specify which endpoint name we're going to use. You can provide a description, and that description will be filled out right there. And once you've replaced that endpoint name, we would just stop this and we would rerun it, and it would host our app on this URL. We could refresh this URL and we'd be going against that endpoint. Right now, because the endpoint isn't stood up, if I were to test it out, it wouldn't work for us here. But anyway, that is it. How to get this stuff started and going in 10 minutes, 15 minutes or less. It's all pretty quick and easy, and we're using DBRX in the background.
Thanks for that, Robert. Really love the how quickly we can get started here, the application, and really like how we can quickly make it relevant to like your own data, your own context, that sort of stuff. So stay tuned for more variants on how we can use Agent Studio in a lot of different contexts, and looking forward to helping you all get Agent Studio set up in your environment. If you want to play around, the link is in the video description. So have a great day, folks. Thanks so much.
Thank you.